and by Koplow.
Oh wow.
Oh, it was.
No, I'd break
that's huge.
break the computer first.
Yeah. Yeah, that's huge.
Why
Do not steal.
do you have that?
It was $3. I'll buy anything that's a die. I don't know when. I kind of like rolling it twice to figure out what a prisoner did wrong.
Is it a concept to determine like which one you should break or which one you should keep?
Depends.
So we
All
can
right,
be
I'm
heard,
thinking
by the
of
way.
rolling stuff up.
Oh yeah, people can hear us. They just can't see us.
No!
Uh-oh.
Haha! You can't see the really cool stuff that's on the screen right now. I feel sorry for you. All the secrets are being revealed visually at this moment.
Cyberpunk Uncensored.
All upcoming RTG products are actually being shown right now.
Yeah. Page for page, item for item.
Look at my chair. It's yellow.
I've got my
There you go.
video
That's how
game
you do all your
con.
interviews from now on.
All right, we're officially live. Everyone can see us now. Hey, what's up? So
Hello!
this is the GM Roundtable. This is a very special episode. You know, anybody tuning in live or watching the VOD knows me and Phil, we've been doing the GM Roundtable now. This is episode 7. We do it the second Saturday of every month. And we're on like the 7th month of this. It's very exciting. We've been committed to this for that long and keep it going. People seem to enjoy it. We have a lot of fun doing it. And this is a very special episode for us because we have J Gray and James Hutt of r.talsorian Games. What's up, guys? How you guys doing?
I'm doing great.
Oh yeah, nice. Well, yeah. When you know, before we get started, I do want to mention anybody that's seen past episodes. We did kind of streamline it a bit. We're kind of combining the intro with what used to be kind of talking about upcoming things or whatever. We're just going to introduce ourselves, what we do, our brands and such, and then get right into what in the world building, which is the topics. And then we'll get into Choomba chat, where we'll take questions from the chat, and that'll be it. So anybody watching, feel free to interject. We're always checking out the chat, but if you have questions and stuff, save it for Choomba chat at the end, and we'll get everybody taken care of. That being said, let's do the intros. Everybody, you brought your D10. We kind of roll for initiative here. We're simplifying it. We're just each going to roll a D10 and see where we're at.
Oh,
I got a
3.
9.
I got an 8.
I also got a 3.
Okay, so Jay and Phil got to roll again.
I have
What's your...
Phil has a higher dexterity, I think.
Yeah, I was going to say, what's your dex bonus? I got another 3.
I got an 8.
Yeah.
Okay, cool. So it'll be me, then James, then Jay, then Phil. So I'm Rob Mulligan. I founded Cyberpunk Uncensored. We're pretty much a fast-growing brand. We're up to over 165 videos on the YouTube, over 80 podcast episodes. I'm slowly catching that up. To the archived versions, plus new episodes, everything has exclusive things, plus all the live shows on Twitch. I have all the Cyberpunk Red tutorials, GM Tips series, Night City Live series, Deep Dive series. We just started up the Tales from the Forlorn Dopes. I didn't come up with that name. That's them. That's Cyber Smiley and Will, who's Cyber Smiley, and also Derek from Data Fortress 2020. They're doing that series. It's a lot of fun. Plus, I'm streaming live artists. We have like Chris Hockabout, who did all the original Cyberpunk 2020 artwork. A bunch of stuff for there, like the 4 Horsemen on the inner page, and like the original Bozo's artwork. He's going to do some live artwork streaming. Plus, still doing interviews, live actual play. I'm doing my monthlies, my weeklies. Plus, we're showcasing a bunch of other GMs you can see on the YouTube and right here on Twitch. So make sure you follow here and you go subscribe on YouTube so you don't miss anything. Aside from that, cyberpunkuncensored.com. We have a bunch of free assets for GMs and players, like auto-fillable character sheets, auto-calculating ones, NPC sheets, data shards, and cyberdeck sheets, new programs, weapon conversions, all kinds of stuff. Our community has just been growing. Go to cyberpunkuncensored.com. You'll see all the great stuff. Plus, we started a whole Scream Sheet project, kicking out regular Scream Sheets for you to use and taking submissions for that. So that's Cyberpunk Uncensored. James Hutt, mic's at you.
Hello, I'm James Hutt. I'm a game designer at r.talsorian Games. I work on The Witcher ttrpg and Cyberpunk Red. And you might know me as the mayor of Balancetown. I'm I was responsible for a lot of the systems in Cyberpunk Red. So I'm excited to talk about that today, as much as I can.
Oh, yeah. And I think it was the Jay.
Who's next?
Yeah,
It
Jay.
was me. Yeah. Hi. I'm J Gray. I am the media ambassador for r.talsorian Games, which is fancy talk for saying I talk to people about stuff online and off for the company. I am also a layout artist, responsible for most recently Cyberpunk Red, the core rulebook, and a game designer responsible for a few things for Castle Falkenstein and the investigation system in Witcher, and I had a hand or two and a couple of sidebars in Cyberpunk Red.
Phil?
Hey, I am Phil Harker-Smith from Baby Beard Media. I join you from Baby Beard Media HQ from our little studio. So we're a bunch of Aussie actors and creators who make ttrpg content and pop culture content. We have a audio-only podcast called Roll to Cast, ROLE, where we play a different system and with a different original story and different storyteller every season. So we've done Cyberpunk 2020, Vampire the Masquerade. We were one of the very first Cyberpunk Red campaigns. As we were, r.talsorian Games were very kind to let us have the rules a little bit early to pop that out for you guys. And we're currently doing a Pulp Cthulhu season. And today I've been recording Kids on Bikes. I myself do some Cyberpunk Red GMing for Sirenscape every Thursday. We've got 2 more sessions left of Out on a Limb. And I also play in a game with John the Wise as well. So yeah, that's me.
Yeah, and definite props for the Sirenscape Weekly. I've been really enjoying watching that. You're killing it. It's awesome. Everyone should go tune into that. Sirenscape is also an official sponsor of Cyberpunk Uncensored. They have really awesome custom sound sets, and me and my wife, who's there in the chat, Val Mulligan, what's up? And we were lucky enough to do some voiceover work for a bunch of the sound sets, plus some of my old band's music. I think they're also going to be using some of my solo project. I have a bunch of different projects I've done in the past, and that's getting in a bunch of those Cyberpunk Red sound sets. Really excited about that.
Yeah, you showed up.
Oh, yeah.
You showed up in the street fair.
Yeah.
Sirenscape sound set, I believe.
Yeah, exactly. I think me and Val are hosting the block party there on one of them as well. It's funny. We're working on some radio stuff and all kinds of stuff with Sirenscape, so it's a lot of fun. But anybody
so
watching...
I have to say...
What was that?
Oh, sorry.
No, I was just going to say, I'm going to put everyone's links in the description just so everybody knows everything that we all talked about. You know, at the end and the VOD and all that, everyone's links will be in the description for everybody. But what were you going to say?
I was just going to say a big thanks to Jay for putting together an amazing cast for Out on a Limb, who are really elevating the stuff that I've put in front of them. There's some amazing flirty banter going on this week, so it's really fun to be doing some really kind of role play heavy stuff in the world. Really enjoying it. But we're here to chat GM stuff. So we're going to go into our main section, which is what in the world building. And this section now, instead of being sort of like, oh, what are we working on? This is going to be our major kind of discussion section. So this week this month, we've got 2 topics. One's a really crunchy topic. And one's a bit more of a general kind of advice topic. So we're going to kick off with the kind of a general advice topic. And that is we're going to deal with common GM mistakes. And then a bit later, we're going to go into that a bit more crunchy, systems-heavy topic where we talk about how to build and run interesting combat encounters. Because let's face it, we all want to shoot guns at some point in our Cyberpunk campaigns. But... let's kick off with our common GM mistakes, little pitfalls, especially useful for new GMs, but I'm sure that for veteran GMs, there'll be some great advice as well. So why don't we roll initiative for this new topic, this new combat round?
4.
7.
5.
2.
Okay, so
great.
Phil.
It's me. Right. So the first kind of topic I want to kind of open with is about kind of spotlighting players and about how to kind of handle the attention around the table. So I think a lot of GMs feel this need to like they have to like spread the kind of the action out onto each person. And I think that is true to a degree, but I think it's over a longer period than people imagine. Is if you keep the group invested in the story altogether and the actions of each other, it shouldn't be too big a problem that one person sits there and doesn't have, you know, much to do in that particular scene. It's okay for a whole session to focus, not exclusively, but to focus on one character, especially if they're having a big revelatory moment or some sort of triumph or crisis in their character. If you've built up to that, the other people in the table will be ready and willing for you to let that let the spotlight sit on that person for that moment. So yeah, that's my feeling. Is that sometimes GMs can be even a bit too democratic at the expense of the story. What do you guys feel about that?
I agree. I think I know what you're getting at there, and I think like sometimes if you spread it out too much to everyone, it feels too contrived. Like, okay, what the plot and the story involves everybody. It's like that thing we talked about. You don't want to involve everyone's life path in every single session or campaign. Like you can't. It's too much, you know. And I know what you mean. Like sometimes sessions, they're more about someone else's background, a particular character's background, or whatever they're doing, or their job, or something more invested in. And it totally is okay. You know, GMs don't need to feel too pressured, like, oh, let me shift it around to everybody equally. You know, you'll get to each player if you spread it out each session. And so I like that.
So I think there's something that piggybacks on this that I often see happen when this happens at a table, at least when I'm playing. I've also seen it happen, others, you get into a situation where one person is really there to play, you know what I mean? And they want to interact with everything, and they're really energized, and they're more energized than the other people at the table. And I think the pitfall is, hey, would anybody else like to talk? Because honestly, you can't ask for energy. It's kind of one of those catch-22s, because what you think you might want to do is say, okay, Bob, you've been talking a lot, but what does Jim think? But sometimes the answer is to let Bob keep talking so long as everybody else is listening and still into it, because that might juice up everybody else and give them their morning coffee. And then in 10 minutes, maybe you're at a situation, that glorious gaming nirvana where everyone is equally engaged and fighting to make the story as cool as possible. So,
a couple of Gen Cons ago, back in the bright days of in-person conventions, I was running Castle Falkenstein, our steampunk RPG, and I ran the same adventure twice. And in both adventures, there was someone picked the character who could speak with animals. It was very classic. Mowgli man-child / Tarzan / lost boy in the woods, raised by wolves sort of character. And the natural benefit is that, of course, is that character can talk to animals. And the first time it came around, it was a brand new player. This was not his first game, but he picked that character. And all through the session, he didn't do anything, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sitting there worried. This person's having a horrible time, and I kept trying to give him opportunities to do something. Like I said, oh, you see a mouse in the corner of the room. I make sure to include that in the description, because he can talk to the mouse, and they're investigating. And that's a witness. But he didn't do anything. Afterwards, I said, I apologize, because you couldn't have had a great time. He said, no, I had a great time. So sometimes you never know. Some people just don't want to participate on that level. That's true.
People roleplay differently.
Later on, I did the same thing, and this time I could tell the person was fidgeting. They're uncomfortable. This was their first real game. They were a board gamer traditionally, and they were trying a tabletop because they liked the whole steampunk mythos. They came dressed in the costume, and I realized that this person just didn't know what to do. They had it, and it's a simple game, but even with a simple game with simple character sheets where everything is spelled out, it's all on one page, they're having trouble. And so eventually I said, oh, that mouse that mouse comes up and talks to you.
There you go. Nice. Yeah.
And so if you're having that situation where you have James, as James says, and James, right, you cannot force a player to engage. You cannot force that energy. What you can do is realize that you have control of 99.9% of the world.
Yeah.
And engage them and give them the chance. They may not take it. They may not bite. You may send, the waitress comes over and flirts with you. And they may say, okay, that's cool. And then do nothing. But at least you can say, I gave you the chance to be part of the scene, or I gave you a chance to have a side scene. And if you don't want to, that's fine. And then afterwards, maybe talk and say, okay, this style of play is obviously not for you. Let's talk about what is for you. And then you can fold and build that into the next session.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point about it's more about providing opportunities for people to engage with it rather than kind of forcing particular people to kind of participate when they might not be ready to. It brings up a thing I think that I've come across with a couple of times in games is that some people might have a hidden or a not highly visible disability or illness or something, which means that their energy level might be something that is quite and their energy resources are quite precious to them, and so they're actually being quite selective about when and what it is they engage with. And we actually developed a system with one of my players who had chronic pain, who had a flip chart of kind of mood faces that they wore around their neck, so they didn't have to stop play to kind of indicate kind of how energized and how participatory they want it to be. So yeah, you don't really always know kind of what people want to get out of the session. I think it's a really good point James has that you can't make people, but you can work with what you have, and by fostering that, it will encourage a better atmosphere overall, rather than trying to wrestling it into the shape you think it should be in.
Yeah, and I think when you said about somebody kind of monopolizing the time, if someone's gung-ho excited to role play such, and maybe others aren't, I think maybe James said it. One thing that I do, it's a GM Tips episode coming out next Friday, I think, on schedule, kind of deals with that. I tend to do it. People that do my monthly one-shot, I think Renegade there in chat, Steve from Sirenscape has thanked me for it as well. But I drop initiative sometimes if it's getting into a situation that's not even combat, but maybe I just know it's going to be some interrogation or conversation or inspection or whatever they're doing, conceal, reveal. I know things are going to happen, and I know some players talk a lot louder. They're more rambunctious with role-playing than other ones, even though they want to, but just some people are louder. Some people are more excited, like you said, and others don't express it the same, even though they might be just excited, just had just as good of a time, But if you do that little initiative thing, it tends to bring it out a little. At least gives each person, okay, well, while they did that, you're over here. What are you doing? What is so-and-so doing? Naming the character, And it kind of gives each person, okay, yeah, I'm checking out this. I'm going to do this. Like they realize that they have a part in that scene, even though maybe it's all about this or that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And that's something else you can do is get the player invested by having them. And this is not only a great way to get players involved, it is also a really good way to be lazy. So I'm running a game called Ryotama, which James knows because we've talked about it quite a bit in the past. Ryotama is a Japanese role-playing game. It's kind of like a Miyazaki film, like Spirited Away or Howl's Moving Castle. Or so forth and such. And one of the things that involves is you're on your journey. The characters are going from place to place. That's the whole concept. And it has a town creation system, which consists of going around the table and saying, okay, tell me a building that is there. And then going to the next person and say, tell me some people who are there. And then going to the next person and so forth until you have the town collaboratively created. And that is something you can do as a GM, because you can say, okay, you're going to a bar. Why don't we talk about the bar? And for a moment you say, what's the theme of the bar? What's a cool person that might be hanging out there? Not only do they do your work for you in world building, but they're letting you know by telling you these things what they would like to engage with. They want to go to that honky-tonk bar as opposed to that really upscale bar. They want to have a fixer there. And this is not necessarily saying, oh, well, they're going to come in and say, oh, well, the person that's there with the large gun collection that I can take the guns from. But at the same time, you can know that they're saying, oh, there's a really angry biker gang there. You know that the group right now, they're kind of spoiling for a fight. And so you can move towards having just a good old bar brawl. So that's a really good way to get them engaged too.
Yeah, Renegade's pointing out, some people like the tactical game a bit more, and that's what they'll engage with. And so you can trust that while the roleplay heavy scene is happening, that's okay. They know that they don't want to participate as much in that. But when the combat comes around, they'll be well into it. So, you don't have to force people into the part of the game that they are not as engaged with either way. So you're going to say, James?
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things you can sort of modulate to sort of change the way your players are experiencing the game is how you describe environments to them. Mm-hmm. Adding like 4 extra sentences onto the back half of your descriptions that describe stuff that isn't centrally plot relevant, but is relevant for scene stuff, like other people that are there. If you find that whenever you're pushed in a game to, oh, my players went somewhere I didn't expect, or they went, I want to go outside and smoke. Oh, I forgot my lighter. I'll walk into the nearby corner store, which is a nightmare that some GMs wake up with in the middle of the night. If when you're describing that tienda off the top of your head, if you're finding that the scene has less detail than you'd like, you can, this is a skill. You can practice this. And because it's a skill, I think it's also important to put here, because we haven't really talked about it. It's okay to get this stuff wrong.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Because the more you get it wrong, the better you'll get at it. It's like you only get EXP for failing.
Right. Now I had a guy in the Discord, I think it was, or no, I think when I was doing my live AMA thing with I'm doing like a live GM tips thing now too. I forgot to mention that series earlier, but just another one. But somebody was mentioning, hey, I've been wanting to GM, I've been reading the book, but I'm so nervous to do it. And how do you know when it's right to do it? And it's like, you never know, just do it. Read the rules. No one knows everything 100%. No one's perfect. Everyone makes mistakes. It's like you never stop learning and growing and getting better and better. And you just got to kind of dive in, and I think it kind of plays into what you're saying,
Yeah, I guess I want to attack something on the end of that. You never stop learning and growing unless you stop playing.
Right. No, exactly. Yeah, you got to get it. You got to get your feet wet eventually.
That's the moment when you stop learning and growing.
Yeah, you have to do it.
Yep. And
so I guess
steal shamelessly.
Oh yeah.
Suddenly they go to the corner store and you got to talk to the person behind the counter. Well, who's the person behind the counter? Well, it turns out it's Kevin Smith's character from Clerks, because that's who you remember. That's who you can role play. And you know what? Maybe they'll get it. Maybe they won't, but either way, it'll be a memorable character for them to interact with.
Oh yeah.
It's Rob Boss. He's currently just doing some painting on a Wacom tablet and pretends like you're not there.
Yep.
And then when you ask him where something is, he acts like you've interrupted him.
Oh, hey there.
You're a customer?
So to tie off my little tip, I think I really want to highlight something that Jay said in your first anecdote, which is that check-in at the end of that session. Oh, you must have had a bad time. What was it like? And so, if you've had a session where you're like, oh, I don't think I engaged all of the players properly, and that's a fear of yours, do open those lines of communication, because then your next session will be better. You may have to adjust things, or you may not. And without that line of communication, you won't be able to tailor your game in the way that you want so that everybody has a good time.
Yeah, I agree 100%. Yeah, if we'll go into mine, I'm next. In mine, I've just got a few things. I'll just name off these things, give a brief explanation, and then you guys can comment on whichever one kind of resonates with you, or if you have something to say about any of these. But first off, one of them was going to be about what Phil just kind of said. A common GM mistake is not doing a little wrap-up chat. Do a little wrap session. When you're done, whether you're streaming or you're at a table, when the session is done, do like Phil just said. Get some feedback. I created a GM report card. I don't recommend doing it every session, but at the end of a long campaign, I send it to my players. It has a bunch of things. You can get that on the site, but things like that help. You get feedback. Talk to them after each session. Maybe do some type of a feedback report sort of thing on bigger campaigns if you so need. But
a lot of good ideas that way as well. People are like, oh, I thought this was going to happen. You're like, okay.
Exactly. And then you're like, okay, make a note of that shit, and we're going to get into that. Exactly. But no, my things, I think, common GM mistake, too much prep and then not enough prep. And let me explain that. It sounds weird, but the thing is too much prep, not being flexible enough. You invest so much in like this plot you have and the way that they're going to get there, the things that lead them there, the locations they've got to go to get there, the end result, and you do so much prep in that. It's an early GM mistake. You get so invested in that, and then when players throw you curveballs or alternate ideas and things, which they all do, and it's going to happen every session, you're kind of stuck. You've put so much into this, and you weren't flexible, just lightly planning the way it goes, but realizing, okay, it could go here, it could go there. Let me add some extra options in, and let me just realize I can move these little points of evidence that push the plot along. If they go over here, they could find it over there. If they need to talk to this person here, but they decide not to talk to them, and they talk to this person, maybe now that's the person that knows that little piece of information they've got to dig around and possibly find or something. Don't be scared to be flexible. And then not enough prep, that leads into being flexible, not putting so much invested in that one plot line, that one main thing, but putting some prep into extra NPCs, extra options and locations of ways to get in and out, and back up potential combat. Putting prep into options, investing in the flexibility of your planning. So too much prep, not enough prep. And then the last thing is the crunch over theatrics. I think a lot of new GMs, they get stuck looking up rules in game. That's fine if the players are cool with it and you want to break being immersive and getting into the game and break the pacing and momentum to be like, oh, let's just spend a minute or two and make sure I'm right about that. Don't overthink it. I think it's important to just focus on the theatrics. Don't make the mistake of crunch over too much theatrics. The most important thing is to have fun. So as long as everyone's having fun, keep it moving forward. And I usually tell my players, hey, if there's something that I did in the rules or I messed something up, by all means, you can mention it real quick. If I jots my memory, we'll do it that way. If not, I still disagree. I'm the GM. We go with that. We move forward. At the end of the session, we'll look it up, see if I was right or wrong or how it was. And then moving forward, we do it the right way, however it turns out. But I don't break the pacing or the game itself. I think it's important to keep that going and just make sure you're having fun. So those are my things. Too much prep, not enough prep in different ways. And then the mistake of too much crunch over theatrics. Any thoughts on any of that?
You said it pretty well. Yeah, every group is different, which is, and it's not even like every player is different. Every GM is different. So the way I run a game is going to be different from the way James runs a game, which could be different from Phil and Rob run a game. That's just the way it is. But the way I run a game for one group is going to change as opposed to another group because every group is different. Hell, every group can be different from session to session. It gets really tough. But the point is that you're going to find that in general, you're going to, after playing with a few sessions with a group, you're going to discover that, oh, they want this percentage of combat to this percentage of role play in general, or they want, this group prefers to play fast and loose, while this group is all made up of people who really not only enjoy the rules, they really enjoy the tactical chess-like elements to how the rules interact with each other, and so they want those rules to go for it. And so pay attention to that, and you'll find you develop it naturally over time, but if you pay attention, the development and the evolution of your game can go faster. And that this group really enjoys a battlefield that's well thought out with specific areas of cover and verticality with fire escapes and that stuff. And this group would prefer that there's a dozen ways to get around a battle every time a potential battle comes up. So
social options, sneak options, yeah.
And
exactly.
Sometimes within a group, some players will prefer one way or another, like Renegade has been kind of saying there in the chat, and that's when it kind of comes into what Phil was saying earlier about kind of cycling in where the direction goes session to session. Don't feel like every session has to touch base on everyone's interest. It'll be too contrived. But sorry to interrupt. I just wanted to mention that.
Oh, no, you're right. But yeah, so it just, in general, how much you plan is, based on we're all busy. How much you plan, But just knowing too that if a group, and you don't even necessarily plan, for example, if your group really likes really intense combat scenes with lots of strategy and tactical variety on the battlefield, you don't need to sit there and draw out everything on the field. What you need to do is you need to find a map, and there are plenty of good maps out there, which already has it. Or if worse comes to worse, boot up your favorite video game and just, get as good an overhead view as you want and just draw it out real quick as it is. You don't have to think about it. I find the levels, for example, in the Hitman series 1, 2, 3 are beautiful for that kind of thing because they're specifically designed to allow stealth games in general are designed to have lots of weird covers and ways around things. And so it's a good way to quickly steal someone else's map without having to sit there and think, oh, well, are there air vents? Okay, what's here? What's there? What's there? Don't forget to put in the bathroom because people do. Which goes back to steal shamelessly. But it's just knowing your group, and this gets back to Rob's question things. Feel free to throw one of those babies out at the beginning of play, so that going in that this group really likes hard combat, or this group really wants to flirt and seduce their way through Night City, and that way you know how better to plan.
And there's a common GM mistake there, accidentally avoiding session 0, where we have a great chance to kind of go over those sort of things and get a feel for what the players are looking forward to in those aspects. So don't make that mistake. Always have a session 0.
Do that. You don't. It's about prepping the right things, right? So if you know what they want, you spend your energy in the right place. You don't want to spend 2 hours building the perfect battlefield and then the players are all like, okay, well, how do we sneak around this? How do we distract our way around it? And you're like, that's cool, but I just wasted an hour of my very precious time on this. My thing for especially outside combat arenas is actually to go on the satellite view of Google Maps and just borrow real places and take screenshots and be like, here you are, do that. My thing for prep and how I prep is I actually sort of base it off things like modules. So I've played good modules and I see what things they provide a DM. These are the NPCs available in town, or these are the notable locations, or if they have a set piece, how they do the set piece, how it's described. And that is my model for how I prep the things I prep. So, my home faction base Heaven, it needs, a set of 5 good NPCs, because the modules I've played in something like D&D are really good when you're like, oh, there are 4 or 5 distinct characters in this town, and the players are bound to glom onto at least 1 or 2 of them. So that's a good thing to prep. I've noticed that's worked in the past, steal shamelessly. And people have been writing amazing modules for all sorts of games, and they're a really good blueprint for what is worth spending your time on, I think, and how to structure bits so that sometimes they're linear, sometimes they open out to more choices, and how to keep that flow through a game, because people with experience have written them, and then people with taste have curated and published them as well.
Yeah, that being said, I think we can Jay, I think you were next in order.
Sure.
Yeah.
Okay. Common GM mistake. Forgetting to take notes during the game.
Oh.
Because so you're going to plan before. Yeah. Well, you're going to plan before the game begins. Or it's a little better that when you're recording it, you can go back and listen to it.
I got my notes.
Yeah. But you're going to record. Yeah, you're going to be playing the game, and your players are going to do something you don't expect. They're going to go to the place you don't expect. They're going to want to talk to the NPC you haven't planned out, and you're going to have to make up that person or that place on the fly, and then 3 sessions later, they're going to go, oh, you remember that guy we talked to? Let's go talk to him again. And you're not going to remember the name of that guy or anything about them because you forgot to write it down, just jot yourself a quick note that you could expand on later, So
true.
remember to write down notes as you go so that you can remember, or, record it if you're up to it and you play it with consent, because, you may be living in California, for example, where you cannot record people without their consent. But have a way to jog your memory so that, quick story. Years and years and years ago, I was running a game. It was a fantasy game called Earth Dawn by FASA. If for those of you familiar with the other major Cyberpunk game, it takes place in the far distant past of that Cyberpunk game. The one with the elves. Yeah, James is going, I don't know that exists. Elf Lines Online? What are you talking about?
I never heard of that.
Elf
That's
on a
not
Shelf?
gonna
How do you...
Yeah. But the point is at some point or another, as a joke, Xena, the warrior princess, was very popular at the time, showing you how old I was. And as a joke, there's a character named Joxer, and as a joke, I put in a character named Joxer. And it was supposed to be this one quick, they met him while on an airship, and he was never supposed to show up again. My characters loved him. He ended up becoming a major NPC. But if I had not written down that note that they liked him at the time, and I think my exact note was, Joxer, bring back.
Nice, yeah.
That may not have happened. So, you never know when inspiration is going to strike, when your PCs, your players are going to react well to something that's a throwaway line. And because it's a throwaway and you're in the heat of the moment and you're trying to keep track of 1,000 different things at once, you're trying to think, what's coming up? What do they just do? Who are these NPCs I'm trying to simultaneously play at once? It's very easy for things to get lost in the shuffle. So yeah, take a moment, write yourself a note. Your players won't mind.
Yeah, I love when you mentioned about the name and forgetting. Like, all of us laughed for a moment because we're all have been through that. I feel like everyone has done that at one point. Like, something happens, you forget to make a note, and then later something revisits. You're like, oh shit, wait, what was their name? Or or something. Like, it's so true, so true. Great.
I write my notes at the end of a session for the same reason that you don't look at the rule book during a session, Rob.
Yeah.
Because if I'm taking notes in the middle of a session, it's getting in the way of play for me because I want to take too much notes.
Yeah.
So at the end of the session, I write my post session brief in my phone, and it's like 4 sentences. And if it wasn't in those 4 sentences, they didn't care about it enough. It wasn't important enough.
Sometimes I'll
only the cream is saved.
Sometimes I'll put like a list. I don't know if you can see it in there, but like a list of names.
Yeah, we couldn't really.
Oh, it's hard to see. Yeah, like a list of names, and then I'll mark, which one, if I need, they interact with somebody I wasn't expecting. Okay, a quick name. Okay, that's Big Val, or that's Tiny, or that's Bobo, that's Zing, that's, and I've got like all these things I can quickly pull, circle, move forward, like I know they did with that, put a little arrow or something like, and keep it moving. But it's a great pre-prep sort of thing, like one of those things like, spend the time on NPCs, because like you said, they're going to talk to somebody you didn't expect, or you're going to forget one or something. Like, but what a great point! Like, make notes, and maybe at the end, like James said, if you're keeping it flowing, but whatever, it's important to take notes. I think, great point.
Yeah, because I mean, most games take place at night because that's when most adults work during the day and therefore can game at night, and so you're tired, and it's 11 p.m., midnight, 1 a.m. when you're done, whatever time it is, and you're like, oh, the only thing I want to do is go to bed. But take a moment, because if you don't do it, your brain is already tired enough. You're probably going to forget it.
So true.
PWB in chat saying it's nice to involve the group in that recap stuff, which I think is really good. There's if someone says, oh, what happened last session, don't just spout it out. You can say, who remembers? And I think it's a really good way to involve everybody.
I do that at the beginning of every session. Who remembers what we did last week?
When we start, I'll usually have one person say it, one of the players, and one of ours, Hollow, had fans that got excited. One of the I was rotating it, and when she did it, people were like commenting because she was all like animated and really into it, and it was exciting and fun, and people started commenting about it. So now we have her do the recap every time for that reason, and it's a lot of fun. But I think that's a great point, yeah.
The way I end my sessions now, and this is something I stole from a couple of actual plays, is I take 5 minutes at the end and I say, okay, we're going to go around the table and everyone's going to say what their favorite thing this session was.
Oh, that's awesome.
And not only does that, help jog memory of what happened, so that everyone goes away thinking, oh, this happened, I remember this now, as opposed to that just general miasma of stuff happened. They start thinking, oh, these specific events happened. But it also tells you, this is a character they like. That I really enjoyed meeting the waiter because he was snarky and fun. Yeah. Like, okay, cool. I know to bring that waiter back later.
Yeah. Gives you direction.
So it is a good way to know. Yeah, it's a good way to help you know and figure out what to do next session.
Cool, thanks. And James, what are your tips for common mistakes that GMs might make?
Well, let me think. Not using enough. I call them skin jobs.
Wait.
Which is when you take.
This isn't rated X. You know, this is it's uncensored. But let's. Oh, okay.
It's when you take a stat block and then you change the title.
Yes.
And that's the only thing you change from the stat block. This is super important for like for more fantasy games where you want to have them fight essentially a goblin, but they're sick of fighting goblins. This is a gremlin. It's different.
Yep.
It's not different.
You take the gremlins, you take the goblin stat block, and maybe you get one power from another monster.
Yeah. Do that.
Yep. And this is really important for Cyberpunk players too, because at the end of the book, at the back of the core rulebook, we give you 10 NPCs, and those NPCs were specific. They have specific names: security officer, booster ganger, but they are specifically designed to. The booster ganger is any scrub NPC your character may come across that has some fighting ability. The security officer does not have to be a security officer. They could be a nomad guard. They could be a military sailor.
They were a corporate hit squad this week on Out on a Limb.
Yep. So
that was the stat block they were based off.
Yeah,
they weren't a security officer, but that was the archetype. Yeah.
And you'll notice if you read through the random encounter list that comes before or after, I can't remember which, but it's a list of, oh no, James, there you are. What? You're thinking in and out. There's a random encounter list where you can have these random encounters in that city, and we do things like say, take the booster ganger stat block, only give them assault rifles.
Yep.
And so, it is. You don't have to make someone from scratch. You don't have to say, "Oh, I can't have them run into Arasaka guards because I don't have stats for Arasaka guards." Just take the rough. Say, I want this to be an easy fight, so you take the booster gangers. Or I want this to be kind of a hard fight. Do you take the security officers? So I want them to be balls against the wall. So I'm going to grab the cyber psycho and just say, "Okay, you run into this person," and just say, "Oh, well, I would think the booster ganger would." If they're an Arasaka security person, would have Kevlar, would have light armor jack instead of Kevlar, and you just switch that, make that one switch.
And then you once you've done it a few times, you'll be able to kind of get a good benchmark for what you think are good combat numbers. These guys have 11 armor. These guys have a combat number of 10 and auto fire. These guys are melee specialists, but they're not so good with guns. So let's put their melee at 12. Let's put their range skills at 8. And you can literally just pluck it out off the top of your head. For most combats, you need 5 core stats or something like that. How far they can move, how good they are at shooting, how many hit points they have, whether they have resistances, and their armor generally is sort of what you need to run a combat.
I think that's a great point to make is like don't get too crunchy with your NPCs, like a GM mistake. Like the players aren't there to watch you play with your NPCs and let me roll every little thing, and you can kind of be theatrical over the crunch,
abstract it a bit.
Yeah, exactly. Make sure you're having fun, keep it flowing, and put the attention back to the characters and players.
No, that leads us on to our next topic, which is good because we used quite a bit of time on that, and this one's a bit more specific. So this is about how to make combats interesting, right? So we want to have combats in our game. They add danger, they add excitement, they up the stakes. But you just don't just want to have 2 people facing off across an empty parking lot, firing guns at each other. It's not that exciting. So there are ways and ways to alter and change combats, not just through combatants and things. So do we want to roll another initiative and see who wants to kind of add in how they go about making their combats?
Oof, I'm going last.
I don't know if that's
5.
a 6 or a 9.
I don't know. I got a 10 too.
I think that's
you got a 10?
9.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's fitting that the Mr. Crunch, the mayor of Balancetown, can tell us.
Mr. Crunch.
Mayor of Balance.
Mayor of Balancetown can tell us what makes combat dynamic and interesting. What makes a good combat encounter?
So I recommend when you're creating your adventure, sort of that pre-scripting of, here are some scenes that I like, where you're just writing 1 or 2 sentences like, and then maybe the place gets attacked. You got to add an additional sentence that says why it gets attacked and what they're trying to do there. And that, make sure the answer to that question isn't kill all of the player characters. If the thing that the enemies are trying to do there is kill all the player characters ideally should know why. And they should have known why and expected that might happen to them. Like, why? We kidnapped a high-ranking executive. That might be why they're coming for us.
We pissed off the local warlord.
Right. They need to get into a situation where they know that that's coming in order for that to be interesting. If it's randomized death of violence, just a guy has a death boner for you, that's kind of weird and doesn't make any sense unless they're a cyber psycho. Right? It kind of does.
Yeah, they won't be as invested.
What's even
in
better
it, you know?
than I want to kill all the players is the thought in these NPCs' heads is, I would ideally love the cash register. I'm trying to kill an NPC in the building that hopefully the player characters don't want dead. But it's also pretty fun if they don't care.
Yeah, actually, I'm thinking that scenario, and I'm thinking suddenly, how does the fight end? Oh, we'll avoid the fight entirely by going and grabbing the NPC and chucking him out the window.
Exactly. The warriors come out to play, but it's somebody else in the bar, and they're like, crud. Not again.
Right, dude, you're me, dude.
So interesting objectives to your opponents, right?
Yeah, that's number one. Why are you having combat? And I think once you know why you're having combat, you can solve the how. And as long as that how is different between combats, congratulations, your combat is tactical and awesome. You're better than most.
Who is next?
I will say that a lot of gameplay that is like they want to kill all the player characters. What you're really saying is, I'm not really playing a Cyberpunk game where these are humans, right? These are goblins now. Your mooks should not be thinking like they're goblins or owlbears, for example, where they're like territorial defense.
Great point.
Or they're in my dungeon. Humans typically have a reason to fight that isn't, I want you dead.
Yeah. Often it's, I'm being paid to protect the thing that you were trying to get or destroy.
And I think the last part, I will cede the floor. I promise it's not a filibuster.
No, go. You go.
Is when your players kill people, make them feel like they are killing humans. I had a part in the game where somebody just starts combat with a civilian that was in cold blood. And they're like, you shot me! You shot me!
Yeah.
Oh, God! My guts are falling out! You know? You have to make them feel like they're hurting people. Or they'll feel like they're hurting goblins.
On that, there is a tendency for people to think, oh, combat ends when one side or the other has reached 0 hit points. That is not true. Combat ends when neither side is willing to engage.
Exactly.
So most people, the vast majority of people out there, they're in enough pain, they lose enough choombas, they're going to run, or they're going to surrender, or they're going to try to do something. And if they run and the other side doesn't chase them, combat is ended, and hit point totals are not necessarily 0. So have them not just treat them like they're killing people, but have their opponents act like people would in a stressful combat scenario.
Self-preservation,
A great way to do that is to, like, if your party downs an NPC, have another NPC try to pick up their dead friend and remove them from the combat area.
If they take a debilitating injury,
they're trying to extract the the non-people I'm killing. You know?
Exactly. No,
Why are they doing that?
it humanizes them, and it adds some dynamics to their personalities, and it brings the NPCs to life. You know, not everything, like you said, is just, you know, meat or whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it has to have, you know, background to it, personality, give some depth and planning to these NPCs, give them at least some motivations. And one of the tips that I was going to say is actually right on that, which was the enemy, you know, treating enemies in such a way where it's not just killing down to, like what Jay said, down to 0 HP. Just like in some cases when it goes too smooth, enemies might have backup. Maybe someone like whistles and others come out of the thing, or, you know, you're in a building, all of a sudden a drone comes out. You can always have backup if things go too easy, but don't forget they can also retreat, which Jay just said, and I have that in my notes. Or something worse. I've had them before where, like, they're getting killed and the guy's like, oh, what the hell? And he just shoots his buddy. He's like, hey, man, I'm on your side, you know? Like, it's kind of fucked up and dark, but hey, it's Cyberpunk, you know? Also, you know, switching sides, you know what I mean? So I just wanted to interject that because you're on that topic. But finish. If you have more, say them, James. Don't feel it's a filibuster thing. This is all about it as much as possible.
Those are my big three. Let's see how the next person follows it.
Okay, that's me.
Who's next?
Yeah, that's
You're
me. So, you know, I just said about the different ways that you can treat enemies. The other thing is leading into the scenes to make it more interesting. Don't forget, it's not just what they see. Appeal to other senses, like you might mention smells or textures or tastes, things like that that could be in the air or around. It's not just visual. The other thing I like to do, and it kind of can give you a little direction of what players like and how far they'll go maybe when it comes to gore or certain violence when you're in combat, is I'll let players describe crits and deaths. And then I'll kind of know if somebody's not describing it a lot or they're not feeling it. Okay, cool. Well, maybe I'll interject when that happens and just get it done. You know, won't put it on them if they're uncomfortable. But 9 times out of 10, you're going to see your players, oh yeah, no, this is how it went down. You know, like most of the time they're going to enjoy that, and it's a lot of fun, and it lets you kind of see how they were picturing it going down. So that's a way to spice up combat. The other thing is making sure you have tasks for your non-combat characters. So if you're in combat, make sure, you know, the techie has to pick a lock or hack a drone, or the netrunner does, or the med tech has to heal somebody. Just make sure that your combat isn't always just bullets and blades, you know, like a combat moment can still involve everybody and still have a lot going on. Then the last thing I'll just mention is the backstabbing, corruption, and alternative intentions and motivations of your NPCs or employers. You can always spice it up. Not everything has to end the way that you had it start. You know, if you had it planned and this NPC was lining it up, well, damn, it went too easy, or this or that, or they figured that out. You know what? The NPC crosses them. Or there's a little corruption with your employer and somebody else steps in. They owe this person money, so, you know, they sold you out to them or something. But whatever you do, you can always, you know, twist it up or make it backstabbing. Think of corruption or alternative intentions and motivations of your NPCs and employers if you need to spice it up, if it's not, you know, spicy enough already.
You hadn't had a fight for a while, have a betrayal or
Exactly. And then starting it in medias res, it's called, like in film and in literature and stuff, where it just kind of, you drop them in. I have an episode I streamed where the team kind of woke up. It started with them waking up tied, no weapons, no armor, in bathtubs in the back of this thing, and guys speaking Japanese. The Yakuza were there, something talking about torturing them. Luckily, one of them understood that language, so they heard him saying, hey, see if they know anything, and then just off him, and he leaves, and the guy's like sharpening blades. They had to try to do dexterity or strength to break out of the zip ties, and like it just started chaotic right in it. Once they broke out of that room, they could get to their weapons and armor after they killed this guy. But you get the point. You can start it right in the middle of some shit. You know, it's called
that's
in medias res. So
imagine if the first thing a player says is, great, I'm glad I bought into Contortionist. Roll, I got a crit. Enjoy that. Enjoy that.
Yeah.
It's that thing of like underrated skill.
Yeah, it truly is. I think it's a really good point, like, of having a dynamic set of tasks or things to achieve is really, really important. It's because it ties into what James is saying about, like, why are we fighting? What are we fighting over? And often, you know, that thing that you're fighting over is something that one of your characters needs to accomplish while they're being defended or escorted or whatever. So I think it's really cool. Do you guys have any input on what Rob said?
I think that's there's some good points in there. I wanted to add that if you look at a lot of historical combat, like war fighting stuff, the battle ends when one side is typically routed. Typically,
That's
people
true.
don't stay to die to the last man, unless it's one of those big combats you hear about where somebody's trapped in a gorge and they can't leave.
Yeah.
I think if your players do the like, we're going to back them up at the end of a gorge, they probably should fight last man. But
Yeah.
Great point.
In fact, as a GM, you should want your enemies, your NPC enemies, to leave and escape. Because you know what? A dead NPC is not an interesting character.
So true.
but it is a lot of free cyberware.
Yeah, it is a reward, and certainly you can control that. But a dead NPC cannot, in most cases, cannot come back to be a problem in the future, or maybe an unexpected ally, or just the perfect example of how far they've come when they come across this person who gave them trouble last time. Where it took the entire party to take this one guy down, and now any one of them could take him on because of how much they've grown in IP over time.
Do you guys ever do, like when I mentioned, if somebody gets a critical injury against an enemy, or I'll be like, hey, figured out the hit points. Why don't you describe how you just took that person's life? And like sometimes I'll say that and let them describe it. Do you guys do that a lot?
Yeah, one of my favorite sentences is, so, how do you kill him?
Exactly. I think we all have our own little, like, you can describe how you ended that person's life, or how did you kill him? Or like, did you do it, James and Phil?
I like to...
Yeah, I do it, yeah.
For why did you when you crit by rolling a 10 on a skill die, I like to say, well, tell me more about how that happens. But I am jealous
that's a great point.
of the critical injury system. When somebody rolls a critical injury, I describe how the body parts go off, because you never really intend to do a critical injury in so much as just a shot pattern might create one, unless you 100% intended to do it with a targeted attack. But I do like to intersperse this time when you shot them, the bullet veered left and entered their left eyeball.
Yeah, for me, I like them to describe what they saw. Usually if it's a death, I'll be like, hey, why don't you describe how you ended that person's life? If it's a crit, I'll be like, wow, you just got a crit injury. We'll roll it. They'll obviously read what it is. And then I'll be like, why don't you describe what you just saw? You know what I mean? And like let them kind of...
Yeah. Or your reaction to it,
But sometimes I'll describe it too, because you just can't resist. It's
there's a player agency of description where if they're rolling their own skill and they crit, then it's their agency that let them crit. But if they get like a more randomized crit injury,
I love your positive idea,
double
though.
sixes on a roll.
I never do it on the 10. I'm going to start doing that. I really like that idea. How you said you do it even when I always do when it's like a crit injury against an enemy or they ended life. But I like yours on a crit success. Yeah, you roll a 10. It's almost like when I do a cool check, like if they describe doing something really cool, right? And they do that skill check and they succeed, but they described it really cool. I'll do a 1d10 cool check, make sure it lands on their cool stat or lower, that they actually did it that cool. Or they pulled it off because they did the skill check, but it just didn't look cool. You know what I mean? But I like your positive. If they get on a 10 and they get that extra d10, why don't they explain how they got that extra? I really like that.
Most of the time, getting a crit on a d10 on a skill they were going to roll anyways, it's probably going to be a success, but it gives you, at least it gives you a reminder to make sure that you're giving them chances to role play within their own character agency.
Yeah, I love that. I really like that idea.
It's also a story building moment. To give you an example, there was an actual play a while back called Omegaville, and I think there was this point where they're in a club, and their netrunner character decides to go on the dance floor, and they say, "Okay, well, roll dance," and they're just, it's just one of those random off things. You're going to dance, you might as well see how well you do, and he does really well. He pops the 10, he rolls another 10. And so for the rest of the campaign, people were recognizing him on the street from the social media videos from that day. So it was this great little story building moment for the character.
That's awesome.
That's cool.
That's good. I like that.
That's fun.
That's why we got the dance. It's there for that reason.
Yeah. Did you have who was next? It was Jay, right?
It's Phil.
I think it's me.
Yeah. Phil.
Sorry. So for my bit, I wanted to share the combat that just happened on Out on the Limb, because it demonstrates a couple of things you've already talked about, like James talked about. There was a character who was incapacitated by like a spinal injury and like a broken leg. So they were like just trying to crawl away. and the act of killing that NPC became a big emotional moment for the characters, something that's going to bleed over to their relationship next time, because there was conflicting motivations about whether they should just kill this person in cold blood after the combat had finished because everyone else had ditched. So I think that you can really put weight on that act of like taking a life, and people will have different reactions to it. And so you can really open out people's role playing and their combat to the reactions to how they take on taking lives and doing violence to others, whether they think it's necessary or do they enjoy it, or do they like taking revenge. And the other thing I like to do, which you'll see if you go watch that combat, is because Cyberpunk combats are less about fight 50 goblins. I know you probably shouldn't throw 50 goblins if you don't want to play 6 hours of combat, but they tend to be against smaller numbers of well-armed opponents, right? You're very, very rarely like zerging against, a ton of eldritch horrors or whatever. So you can name them. I always name them. So even if the characters in the world don't know who they are, that's Amanda, that's Skimmer, that's Trent, and that's Wallace. That gives me a way to keep track of who's doing what in my head, but it also is that little element of humanizing. So yeah, I find those things like are really, really good for making combats a little bit more, even if they're just a small shootout in an alleyway, add that little bit of texture. But for me, my 3 things for combat are terrain, opponents, objective. So it happens somewhere interesting, so it's either got verticality, interesting cover, or it's just a unique place to fight. Like I had a fight in a cabaret, like in a bordello, so all the tables are turned over, and that gives you fun descriptions for like what you can use for cover, where you dive, what happens when things get damaged. So think about like what might make a place both interesting tactically and interesting description-wise, because that will stick in people's mind. Oh, the time that we fought in that diner, or the time that we were on top of that skyscraper, or whatever it is. The emotional feel of it can be as important as the tactical feel of it. Opponents, give them names, give them different specialties. If you've got that much kind of fineness to them, maybe they have a netrunner with them. Or I did one in our red campaign where we had there were 3 cyber psychos. Sort of not all 3 turbo-powered cyber psychos, but one was fast with cyber skates and a melee. One was a big tank with a grenade launcher. Another was a sniper with crazy like cyber optics and accuracy, right? And they had 3 archetypes, so the opponents were interesting for their capabilities and their characters, not just some people to fight. And then, as you say, objectives: protect, defend, hack. These are all reasons to be there. And then to tie in what you said, Rob, about give them something to do or add in wrinkles. I love a ticking clock. As soon as that first shot is fired, backup's on the way. Now you've got 5 minutes until overwhelming force arrives. So you better crack that safe. You better get to the bottom of that net architecture, or you better assassinate that NPC before MaxTac comes down like a ton of bricks on your heads. And then, you can fudge things. You can adjust so that, the backup arrives just as they're finishing off their objective. Right. And, they make it out shooting over their shoulders and the nomads tearing off over the grass and onto the highway just as the helicopters arrive. The ticking clock is such a good device. And there's various ways to do that, whether it's backup, whether it's a system lockout, whether it's a rendezvous they need to meet. The ticking clock is really, really good. So yeah, those 3 things: interesting place, interesting opponents, interesting objective.
I can say trigger that siren sound in Sirenscape. That's what I like doing. Yeah. Sometimes, like towards the end, I'll be like, like if it's starting to get tight and they think it's on the way, and I'll be like, all right, getting about that time.
Yeah, you guys hear that. If it gets out of the background, that's their own. That's their own fault, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah. I love it.
So mine it's a writing tip, which works well for GMs, and that is passive voices suck in most situations. Know your action words, because Joe shoots at you with his rifle is a boring sentence. Joe raises the rifle to his shoulder, sights down the barrel, and fires. You see the flash of the muzzle right before the bullet explodes out of the rifle towards you. It's exciting. And that's hard. That takes a lot of energy, especially to do it over and over and over and over again. You got 5 people shooting at someone. That's 5 different shooting descriptions. So what I'm going to suggest to you is this. That is a skill you learn. And one of the best ways to learn it is to steal shamelessly from other people. Don't watch TV to learn this. Go read a book. There are books. Find a book with a lot of good action scenes in it. Read how they describe it. Even take notes. Write down how they describe it. So that when it comes to the game, you can pick it up and just substitute your names for their words. You know, your word. And the more you read, and good examples, if you want some good fantasy combat, there's a writer named Tamora Pierce who does a really good job of making action both exciting and real. She really pays attention to how real combat works. She's medieval fantasy, so that high medieval fantasy, so that may not translate, say, to Cyberpunk so much. If you want something that's a little more cyberpunkish, go and read Robert B. Parker. He wrote the Spencer for Hire series, as well as several others, including some westerns. He does a really good job of describing, for example, hand-to-hand combat, the way a boxer, someone who is a professionally trained boxer, would approach it. Applying just the right amount of force. It's a great thing about his characters. They don't all, there's we get a question a lot. Why doesn't body increase melee damage? That's because you let the tool do the job. Use the least amount of force as possible because you want to save your energy for the rest of the fight. And he does a really good job of describing doing that. A lot of times Spencer doesn't punch someone. He just gives him a whack open-handed across the face. That's all he needs to do. He has some great lines about how, I've got this tiny little short pistol in my waistband, and it's not only good to 20 feet, but you know what? If the fight's over 20 feet, I've already lost. He does this. So read books with good action scenes, and don't just read them. Study those action scenes. See what words make those action scenes compelling, and then use those words to describe the action in your game.
It's a great way to give a bit of character to them as well. Sorry, James.
So one more book you got to check out. Other than, of course, listen up, you primitive screwheads. Great book we put out is The Monsters Know What They're Doing by Keith Amon. Probably saying their last name wrong, but it's been like a classic, read this if you're a dungeon master book rack for the longest time. It's built for D&D stuff, but it gives you a lot of interesting ways to think about combat tactics. Because,
baddies don't fight fair. Why would they? Baddies don't fight fair. Why would they?
Right.
They're going to ambush you. They're going to throw their reinforcements at you. They're going to trap you.
Why wouldn't that guy take a moment to grab from that bucket of that ashtray bucket that's full of ashes and sand and throw it in your face?
Right. Oh, that's a great point too. That's a great, interesting combat encounter tip right there too. Is don't be so traditional with your weapons and methods. Think outside of the box, like you just said. A little sand in the eye, a little ashtray ashes, or something along those lines. Like that can spice up a thing. Like, and maybe they don't pull out their sword or the baseball bat they're holding. They grab a chair or flip a table at you or something. You can all spice up. Same damage, same roll, same thing, but it makes it more interesting. Spices that up. Great point.
What the most
it can tell you a lot about the.
One of the most interesting weapons I've ever seen in a game is someone spent 2 rounds. They spent a round opening the gas tank of a car and pushing a hose down it. There happened to be a hose in this situation. And then, they spend the next round sucking on the hose to get the gas to start flowing out. And then they, put their thumb over the gas that's flowing out and spray it all over the bag, all over their enemy. And so it took them, it was some setup. It took them something like 3 or 4 rounds to set it up. But the satisfaction of when he said, then I flick my lighter on and throw it at him. Was so great and
that's
so
like
outside the
cinematic.
box. I didn't. All I said was don't fumble the roll because I was so impressed by the patience and the tactics.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you keep having your encounters be, I want to reduce the enemy to 0 HP, people won't do that because they'll be too busy reducing the enemy to 0 HP.
Yeah,
That's so true.
Yeah.
There is
They'll be
nothing more
I've got to
boring
get through this.
than having two opponents go up to each other toe to toe, square to square, and say, "I hit him with my sword. I claw him with my I claw him with my claws. I hit him with my sword. I claw him with my claws."
Yeah.
It's like Phil said. The environment is important. In fact, I'll go so far as to say, the environment should be another character in the scene.
Oh, great point.
You should not only be describing what happens to the NPCs. Every round, you should take maybe a round and write this in the initiative, even if you have to, so you remember. This is what happens in the environment. There's so much smoke now. The sprinklers go off, and now everyone's being drenched with the this foul-smelling water. That was or
somebody calls the cops.
The sirens in the distance. That shot that missed last round. There is a fire extinguisher spraying foam all over the room. There are sparks coming from the console. Give the environment an initiative turn. Describe it. And as the environment changes, and players will learn this if you teach it to them. If the NPCs use those changes to their advantage, the players will learn to do that too.
I did that in a hotel one where they were going around to different rooms, and there was this cryo tank machine thing where it looked like they were doing some experimental brain dance thing, whatever. They didn't get a chance to investigate, but when they were firing and missing, a shot hit it. And, in the red book, they have damage for different types of heats, whether it's flame or radiation or things like that. And it can spice up by just making the environment almost a combative energy or whatever, you know what I mean? Great point. And I love your idea of, almost making a note as a GM of putting it in the initiative so you don't forget to incorporate all that spiciness. I like that. That's a great idea. There's a
lot to keep track of. You got a combat where you have a team of 5 going up against a team of 5, and you're responsible for 5 of those people and keeping track of all their HP and all their ammo and all of that stuff. And then also kind of keep track of what's going on with the PCs, because you have to have it in the back of your mind. Oh, I have to remind this person they're seriously wounded so they don't forget, stuff like that. Writing things down like that, saying, okay, this is the environment's turn and I got to describe what happens, really, really helps because it doesn't get lost in the shuffle.
Yeah, and it's nice to mark time as well. Things happen so fast in Cyberpunk. Your rounds are like 3 seconds, right? So you're in third round, you've been playing for an hour, but it's like the third or fourth round. You're like, sometimes I stop and go, this is what's happened in 10 seconds. These guys pop out, automatic fire fills the alleyway, everything crumbles. This guy gets shot, and you just kind of quickly sum up what's happened and how fast. And it kind of condenses that hour of play suddenly into like a dramatic happening, which can be really fun as well to just sort of like collapse the rules back down to like a cinematic scene instead.
And you can restore pacing that way too, Like if something's dragging out a little too long, you find yourself in combat that long, sometimes it's a good idea to try to summarize it. I've been stuck in situations like that before,
What, in alleyways with automatic weapons?
No. I mean, just in general, streamlining a combat that maybe is dragging on a little too long, and you come up with a creative way to kind of, maybe make it cinematic and summarize some of that to push it along and get pacing back to where it should be.
Just to put a bow on
that note. Yeah, I was going to say, on that note, just remember, the players can't see the NPC's character sheets. They have no idea how many hit points they have.
Yes, if you want them to go down, they can go down.
That's true.
Yeah. I just put a bow on what you started with, was this idea of like making each shot or each action a little bit interesting. It's also a way to convey a little bit of character or extra information to the players, like about both the sort of character of the people they're fighting or their mental state. Like, are they taking snapshots as they back away looking for an exit? Or are they, grinning with assured victory as they, advance slowly upon you with overwhelming force? It can add those little things without having to explicitly say, these guys are confident, these guys are falling back. You can be a place to work in a little bit of, not just make it visually exciting, but to add role playing and dynamism to the situation as it unfolds as well.
You just remind me one other thing that goes with what you just said there with adding that layer in J with the environment thing. One thing I did in the past, not just sirens or backup or someone calling for backup, things that add that pressure, things going on, put a time on it, whatever. But also going into NPCs. Sorry, completely lost my train of thought. I started reading that. Renegade saying I love. Yeah, I love. I'll get back to that when it pops back in my head. But I love GMing office cadets when I was in the Army, as I knew exactly like pre-planning their group tactics, because kind of what their skills are and playing into that, so you can think outside of the box and kind of pre-plan all the different options that they do.
So you'd be a bit more merciless knowing their capabilities.
Yeah, but I'll have like an NPC instead of just calling and things. I knew it would pop back in my head because that's what sparked me thinking of it. But having them pull out an agent, in filming or something. Maybe they're not calling, but they're filming, and later on that's in a future screen sheet. Maybe it's not in the combat zone, but it's somewhere where they do report shit like that. And maybe now you've got some questions to answer from the local district PD or city PD. So I've had that happen before where like they were leaving and they remembered to hack the cameras, get rid of the footage, but they forgot the bouncer at the front that they didn't finish off that was there as they were leaving, pulling out his agent. And I did mention that, and they kept going, and then later it came back. It was in a news report and stuff. But yeah, just another little spicy thing that you can kind of throw in.
James, you were going to introduce our last section, weren't you?
Yes. So the last section, I've been told, is something called Choomba Chat.
Hell yeah.
It's where we're going to answer some questions that you put in the chat. Now, I can't see the chat right now. Who can see the chat?
I can, and Rob can.
I can see it.
At the very least.
So
And one good thing, I think
let's hear some questions.
Yeah,
guys.
Anybody has questions in the chat, put them in there. And it can be about anything, GM tips, anything about the GM Roundtable. But also, we got the guys from our Talsorian Games here. If you have any questions, obviously they're here.
Not when Black Chrome is coming out. That's not allowed.
I think they're tired of.
So while we're waiting for questions, I'm gonna give you guys a treat. You have to look real fast, though. Okay, ready?
Oh, that's a nice treat.
Oh, the GM screen.
I like that one.
Is that what that is? The artwork for it?
Oh, whoa, faster, go faster.
Oh, man.
People are now have screenshotted that.
Yeah, I already did my pre-order.
I'm relatively certain that I was going just fast enough that all the words are blurred, so not to worry about that.
Good.
There was also a bunch of gloss on it. Yeah, I think we're fine.
Yeah.
So when they proof a GM screen, they do not send you a GM screen fully made. What they do is they send the paper that will go onto the chipboard, and then on top of that, they overlay a piece of plastic which shows you where has the cut marks, so you know where the sheet will be trimmed down. So that is what you see, but the glossy plastic on top makes it very hard to see.
I'm so happy we're gonna get you guys that pretty soon.
Yeah,
I've been playing with it. It's good.
Yeah, James and I did a lot of back and forth on this one.
About what should go on.
About what goes on, where it goes, how do you fit it? Those three things, very important. How is it presented?
There's a lot of very functional design in that, and also the layout is really good.
Yeah, there is. Thank you. There is no waste. There is not a single there's not we had this corner free, so we put a picture there. Nope.
Yeah, no. Right. There's no throwaway table.
Nice
on that.
That's exciting. Yeah, I already put in my pre-order with the same site I did my pre-order for. I
think we can say we have the full critical injury table on that, so no flipping to that section anymore.
Yeah, that would have helped me this week.
There's reason enough.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. I was a bit slow on the old crit injury table this week.
It can be tough. We recognize it as a chonky book, and we recognize this is the kind of game that requires a GM screen, which is why we've been working hard to get it for you as fast as possible. And hopefully, it is go at the printer. We can say that it is go at the printer, and we've sent out the approval on the proof. And so now it's just a question of how soon the printer can get it and get it to us. Which it's 2021. We're a year into the pandemic. There is a global shipping crisis because there aren't enough containers to go around. There's literally a shortage of shipping containers,
and there's no flights. So yeah, but we have a question. Renegade's asking, There's a little bit of, I think I'm just going to interpret.
It's thinking of a stun gun. I saw that same chat. It's in the Cyberpunk Red RPG group. One of the ones I'm an admin of there too. Shout out to them. Everybody should join that one as well. But yeah, they were talking about a stun gun, I believe. Renegade, correct me if I'm wrong. That was the post. They were wondering. Somebody was wondering exactly how a stun gun worked in Cyberpunk Red. Because it talks about the charge, but how is it delivered? And a majority were saying much like how tasers are now with the darts and the threads, the cables or whatever.
I believe it's an exotic weapon.
Yep.
I believe we literally have something called stun gun. Is the question, how do the rules work?
No, I think it was how is the charge delivered?
Yeah, is it like a zapper, like contact zapper, or is it darts with cables?
Oh no, it's fired, so it's darts with cables.
Do they string back to the main unit, or are they self-powered in some way?
There are multiple darts. In terms of how it is, it's sort of like we have one category. Like when we talk about very heavy handguns, we're talking about a whole bunch of different armaments.
Yeah.
That exotic weapon in particular, there are a bunch of different versions of it. If you want yours to be like a classic taser with the strings, you can have that. But they have multi-shot tasers right now that you can go and look at on the internet. They're pretty cool. And the answer is sort of like a sci-fi version of that.
Yeah. I think functionally,
but it's whatever you want.
Yeah, functionally, whether the wires retract or the
I think they're asking. Renegade says they're asking because they said ammo doesn't cost anything, so I think they were wondering how the
whether wires retract or it's got multiple shots. Either way, it's flavor, and it's your choice how you flavor it.
There you go. And
the answer to that is it uses the same exact removable, rechargeable battery pack that the Screecher and Microwave use. I believe it uses the exact same text. That was very intentional. To create classic weapons that are built off of rechargeable battery packs.
You know how you go to the hardware store and you can get the same battery for like 10 tools?
Yeah.
Same thing.
Cool. Cyber Smiley question, and I've had this question too. It's come up a lot. Question for r.talsorian Games. Some of the art, like the GM screen, any thought of offering prints like poster size, or depending on license, is there a way to get the artist to offer it or something? A lot of people like the art involved, and they want like prints or poster size versions of things.
At the moment, right now, you can order a. I have one on my wall. You can order this from DriveThruRPG, and they will ship it to you. This and one other poster. We will be offering others down the line. Cool. It is mostly a question. Yeah, it's mostly a question of how we want to do it. We're looking into the best and most cost-effective way to not only get the poster, but store the poster and ship the poster. Because good posters, like this poster, comes folded in half. And I have it framed, and it doesn't. You can't really see the fold line. But a really good large poster, for example, you need a roll. And so that is something that we have to talk to our warehouse about, because we do not warehouse ourselves. We have a warehousing company we work with. So there is logistics we're working out, but yes, we want to offer posters down the line.
So I think it's worth noting there's some amazing art attached to Red in the book on the covers. Just worth mentioning and congratulating you guys on a great looking book with some really great art, and it's no wonder people want to have a piece of it on their wall.
Okay, so Jay Kovac, Jay Kovac, who is our art director and also does art direction for Chaosium, excels at getting the best out of artists. It is her special superpower.
Nice. Can you negate
is asking when hitting with a car with damage and whiplash, does that apply to the tombs in the car, which I believe is yes?
No, the people inside don't get the damage. They don't get the 66. They get the whiplash critical, is how my understanding. So they get the 5 and then the whiplash, but it's the people outside.
Is that whenever they run over a person or anything, or only when they commit to ram so hard that the car stops, which I believe the answer is
only stops if you didn't reduce. No. Only stops if you don't reduce the HP to 0. If it goes to 0, you keep going. You tear right through it. But correct me if I'm wrong, James.
You hit a pedestrian, you get whiplash. Is that right? But the thing that I think is interested is like, what about seat belts and airbags?
Yeah, I love that. Can you negate the whiplash if they're wearing seat belts or have airbags?
I want to point out that the Cyberpunk universe diverged from the regular universe around the late 80s, early 90s.
Right,
so a lot of the government-backed safety initiatives probably never actually happened. So you're thinking airbags, seatbelts, maybe airbags. Yeah,
no one even invented them.
Yeah.
Combat plow.
Combat plow. Yeah.
The problem is that your car was stopped when it had to ram into something else.
No.
Yeah.
Combat.
Let's take this to serial.
Let's answer the question.
The answer to the question is I have my car. My car is a weapon. I use my car to run over a bozo. What happens to myself and the people inside the car? Mechanically.
They get
okay.
Everyone gets whiplash.
Well, let's have
James,
the mayor tell us.
Yeah.
So, off the top of my head, everybody in the situation gets whiplash. The car that you ram into the person with takes an equal and opposite amount of damage as the person you're hitting. But if you're in the car, you just get whiplash.
No, whiplash, does that come with the 5 points of...
Yeah, it comes with the 5 points, my understanding. But then the thing he said about if it keeps going or the vehicle stops, it's my understanding that whatever you hit, if you reduce that to 0 HP, the vehicle can keep rolling forward because it destroyed whatever it hit. But if the HP wasn't reduced to 0, being an object or something that it hits, the car is stopped. But if it's a person, they do have the chance to beat that DV-13 to jump on top of the vehicle. Don't forget that. Did I cover it?
But if it's a person, you can always keep driving after hitting a person.
I love the jumping on the car part. That's so fun. That's such a great option.
Yeah. I've yet to see it happen, but
that being said,
I know.
Yeah. A car safety system, which includes safety harnesses, for example, inside the car, like the kind of a race car driver has, that would negate that whiplash, would be a perfectly reasonable invention for a tech to invent.
I like that.
Yeah.
Great idea.
So Nomad comes, it's like, I really like hitting people with my car.
Well, then you get a combat plow, but yeah.
Combat plow kind of ruins the lines of my car, though. You know, doesn't look great when I'm running down the street in it. So, could you just give me like a shock absorbing harness so I can hit people at will?
Yeah, no, that is. I would say that is a perfectly reasonable tech invention.
Yeah, I like that a lot.
I like it.
Yeah, and the other thing too, we're not getting hit with a shitload of questions here at the end because I think we did a good job too of kind of like anybody dropped one in along the way, we kind of answered and covered things. But yeah, this is a bit of last call for questions in chat, I guess we'll say. Last call. Anybody? Flashing the lights. Get your questions in. Oh, my beautiful wife Val has to get back to work.
Did any of your testing scenarios become like an interesting combat encounter in a campaign?
I believe we did one-on-one combat testing, and the one-on-one combat testings usually end with somebody getting choked out, just because being in a grapple is not as disadvantageous when there are other people that could shoot you that aren't in that grapple. So it was really that was the origin of the grapple meta, is like people wringing each other's necks in an alley. That was fun. I believe if you look back through some of the messages from Balance Town posts we put on our website, there's a pretty cool version of Balance Town where it had a lot of like cargo containers making these tight alleyways.
Oh, cool.
That one's pretty cool.
Nice.
It's got the cargo containers from the Serenity board game.
Nice.
Hell yeah.
Okay, I think that's it for questions.
Yeah, I think we did good. Renegade saying thanks. My wife Val saying great job, great session, everyone. Thanks everyone in chat. Seriously, Pyro, everybody that contributed. Renegade, we always love seeing you. I had a great time. Thanks to everybody for joining us. Like I said, me and Phil have been doing this now for 7 months. We've been keeping it going. It's been a lot of fun, but we're really excited that Jay and James, that you guys joined us for this one. And I'm excited how we kind of streamlined things, Phil, in the new layout and being able to kind of dive into a couple topics and really, I feel like, we went over a lot of great tips in this episode. It was really a lot of fun. I know I got a lot out of it too. So PWB, thanks for being in the chat. Yeah, and PWB, just a shout out to him. He's the one of the head writers there. He's leading up our Scream Sheet project. He goes by Ferris Bueller on our Cyberpunk Uncensored Discord. So anyone interested in joining up or submitting or whatever, hit him up. Aside from that, yeah, I'm gonna like I said, I'm gonna put everybody's links in the description, so everyone can check out everything that we all do and have going on. Other than that, before I kill the transmission, any final words, Phil?
No, not too much from me. Other than we got 2 more sessions of Out on a Limb on Thursday nights American. Please come and catch those. If you haven't, if you're not up to date, go watch the VODs back on the Sirenscape YouTube channel or on the Twitch channel. It's really cool, and we're getting to the pointy end. So yeah, I'd love it for if you haven't checked it out, please come along and check that. That's the most exciting thing I'm doing at the moment. Otherwise, check out Baby Beard Media and catch us next month as well.
Oh yeah. Any last words there, Jay?
Okay, if you are a fan of Cyberpunk Red and you are craving more Cyberpunk Red material, go to r.talsoriangames.com. You will find there, among other things, in our download section, you will find some pre-gen characters for all 10 roles. You will find the Cyber Chair, which is a really cool spider-walking chair that you can upgrade with cyber limb options. You can find a few other cool things like the Red Chrome Cargo Scream Sheet, and there will be more material in the future. You will also find the Cyberpunk Red FAQ, which answers a lot of questions you might have about the game. And every so often we run Letters from Balancetown, in which James answers questions sent to us by the community. Many of those questions get eventually put into the FAQ, but you also find them in the blog. The latest one was last Friday, where James answered some very interesting questions, which I am blanking on. Give me 1 second. I'll find the most interesting one. From the mayor's desk, 3/5/21. Someone was asking, what are the consequences of living an exclusively kibble lifestyle, and why would anybody, especially power gamers, ever want to do anything but? And the answer was basically, if you want to live on dog food for the rest of your life, you can. But you know what? And James points out a hidden feature of lifestyle that people aren't reading. If they don't read deeply into the lifestyle, if they don't read the description very well, they might miss that. Lifestyle doesn't just pay for your food for the month. It pays for your entertainment for the month as well. And if you only have a kibble lifestyle, every time your group goes to the bar and you go to the bar to get drinks, or you have to go get into a club and there's a cover charge, or your group decides to go down to the local movie theater and catch a movie, you have to pay for that with the Eurobucks in your pocket. But if you have a higher lifestyle, then it's comped. It's considered basically you've put aside a budget for your stuff, and it's within that. So, there is a gameplay advantage to that, just if you read a description of the lifestyle.
And GMs can be creative too within that. If one of your players is doing a kibble only lifestyle, you can always give them like some type of like negative to their wardrobe and style or personal grooming for permanent like gas problems or skid marks from the chronic diarrhea from eating nothing but kibble, and like people notice around them, and like all of a sudden their social skills are tanking, Like...
Technically they're healthy, but they have this horrible yellow pallor to them.
Hair
slowly falling out in clumps.
I don't know how I feel about that. That's most of Night City. You're talking about most of Night City, man. Yeah, nice to him.
That's funny. Well, that's why the combat zone smells funny.
But the guy next to you is like, yeah, me too, buddy.
Exactly.
You know what? running water is not is a bit of a luxury in Night City. So
that's true.
In 2020, there was actually a product called Shower in a Can, which is basically just like a hyper deodorant that also eats away skin flakes that's get on the surface of your skin.
Yep. That being said, any final words, James, before we kill this transmission?
Oh, well, I just had a blast coming on today. Thanks for having me on. Be sure to buy all the r.talsorian Games products you can get your hands on.
And Monster Fight Club miniatures, and Cyberscape sound sets, and Q Workshop dice.
And you'll hear a little bit more from me at the beginning of next month. Got something important for you.
Nice.
Yes. A really very important Cyberpunk product is dropping.
That's right. Month. Beginning of next month.
Very exciting. Hey, you heard it here. Very exciting.
First.
Hell yeah! And I'm gonna be spreading that word too. Might even have to make a little clip of just that little bite there of James and put that out. But yeah, that being said, I just want to thank you guys for joining us. Thanks, Phil, as always. You know, we've been doing this a while, and thanks, J James, joining. Everyone in chat for contributing and being here. As you know, I'm Rob Mulligan, the founder of Cyberpunk Uncensored. Make sure you give us some love and support. Follow, subscribe on YouTube and Twitch. Go to the .com and check out all the free assets and cool shit there as well. We'll see you next time, second Saturday of every month, GM Roundtable. See you later. Take care.
See ya.